I'd like to call the special meeting of the Board of Trustees of East Central ISD held June 11th, 2024, beginning at 5:30 in the Student Services Building, 7395 FM 1628, San Antonio, Texas 78263. The June 11th special meeting of the East Central ISD Board of Trustees will be held in person at the Student Services Building. A sign-up sheet for public comments will be available at the door. Anyone wishing to make a public comment must sign up prior to the meeting starting. The subjects to be discussed or considered or upon which any formal action may be taken are listed below. Items do not have to be taken in the same order as shown on this meeting notice. Unless removed from the consent agenda, items identified within the consent agenda will be acted on one at a time. And at this time, Ms. Del Brazil, would you like to call roll?
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Ginger Friesenheim.
Here.
Victor Garza. John Massengale. James Mulkey.
Present.
Del Brazil is here. Emilio Carrasco.
I'm here.
And Monique Fraser.
Here.
Have a quorum. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Dell. And next we'll have the prayer and the pledge, and who's doing that today?
Mr. McKay.
All right, Mr. McKay, you're on.
Y'all please bow your heads.
Mr.
If you want to
G.
stand, if you want to do it afterwards.
That'll be
Stand.
next. Might as well.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day, Lord. We just continue to ask that you bless this community, Lord. You bless this district, Lord. We just want to say thank you for these leaders that are in this room, Lord, those volunteers that are giving up their time to serve this wonderful community, Lord. We're just humbled by that opportunity. We're just asking you to continue to bless our earth with rain, and please keep us safe on our way home. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Any public comments? No public comments. So at this time, we'll move on to item number 5 on the action agenda, 5.1, construction administration service, work related to hail damage, HVAC replacements. Mr. Toscano.
Yeah, trustees, so y'all are all familiar with the fact that we just completed a multi-year, very large hail damage project program. What TASB, our insurance provider, does is they have software that monitors storms, storm activity, and when there are storms that go through our district that indicate possible damage, they notify us and then they come out and assess the situation. So in March, there was another hailstorm, actually came from a different direction. So there's actually some rooftop units that were not damaged in the previous hailstorm that were damaged in this hailstorm. And so TASB did indicate some HVAC rooftop units that needed to be replaced as a result at Oakcrest, Legacy, Sinclair, Salado, and Pecan Valley. And we're bringing this to you tonight because of the lead time for equipment being what it is. The sooner that we can get approval and mobilize our team to go ahead and order the equipment they need, the more likely it is that we get the majority of this done in the summer, which is what our goal is. So that's what we're bringing for your consideration tonight is Texas Chiller Systems. That's who our staff is recommending to do that with. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, anybody? Any questions?
No questions?
No? Okay. So,
Madam President, I'll make a recommendation.
sure.
Okay. Recommend board approval of Texas Chiller Systems as the contractor for work related to hail damage HVAC replacements at Oakcrest, Legacy, Sinclair, Salado, and Combat.
Perfect. Do I have a motion?
I'm okay.
Oh, motion?
I thought you were gonna repeat it, you're not.
Oh, do I need to do that again? You know, I'm still in training now.
Okay.
I need to
We know
repeat
you
it?
have
Okay. I recommend the board approval of Texas Chiller Systems as the contractor for work related to hail damage HVAC replacements at Oakcrest, Legacy, Sinclair, Salado, and Pecan Valley. And do I have a motion from Ms. Ginger and a second from Coach?
That's that word.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Coach.
I know.
I got my training wheels on still.
Well, good.
No good, you're good.
Routine.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda will be the board workshop. Item 6.1, the EISO training with ESC 20. So, would y'all like to introduce yourselves to us?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. My name is Lloyd Bursta. I'm a retired superintendent from Southwest ISD. Retired last summer. Now I work part-time at the Region Service Center. And just to let you know, I'm here with Dr. Sherry Ray to do the ISO training, evaluating improving student outcome training. And we'll get more into the information. Thank you for having us. And first thing I want to do is throw out a lifeline. If there's any technical people in here who know how to stop our words from showing up on the screen as we talk, I would really appreciate any support.
I have never seen that before. I've never seen that.
I thought that was great.
And
If somebody doesn't hear you, they
That's
can
it, I was
hear.
wondering.
There's
why y'all had
gotta be
that
a
going.
mic on.
It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
but we're trying to cut it off.
We'll get
It
somebody.
is,
So trustees, before they get started, this is a training required by the agency. Every 2 years, you have to have this training as a board, and our goal was to try and do it all together this time, so we're not staggered in when it's required. So you guys will all have that training for the next 2 years on the same schedule.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Sir.
Thank you. And thank y'all for being here too. We appreciate it.
One lady
Not
in,
really
one lady
retired.
out. So Dr. Bays and I, we've done this in tandem at more than a few school districts. We've had the opportunity to go out and do the presentation. So I invited her to come to this so you don't have to get bored and just listen to my voice the whole time. This is a PowerPoint that is created by the Texas Education Agency. It's the same PowerPoint that everyone who goes through ISO training gets. We've had an opportunity to go through and remove some of the redundancy in the presentation, but it's still upwards of 60+ slides. And just to give you an idea, TA, they like to use a lot of words, and we want to make sure that we do our due diligence, provide you the information. I think some really great information in this presentation to look at, but it's not the watershed of all things, because we know when we look at school districts and we look at campuses, there are a number of ways to measure effectiveness and opportunity for our students. Thank you, Shane. So Dr. Bays is going to kick off our presentation today. And part of that is we get to hear from you all, introduce yourselves to us, so we have an idea of who you are and how long you've been on the board. And before I turn it over, I just want to say East Central ISD has a stellar reputation of hiring really great leaders. And I'm going to tell you, I've been in the system. I was in the system before I retired, 33 years at Southwest. I was a middle school principal, I think, when Tony Costanzo was the superintendent, and I thought they could never get better than that. Then Gary Patterson came. I said the same thing, and then you hired Roland Toscano. So you guys have a stellar reputation of hiring really quality leadership. I'm not saying that because I consider Roland a friend. I really mean that. He's a leader at Region 20, a leader among leaders. He leads all of our superintendent meetings. So I just want to throw that out there before I turn over to Sherry. We can get started today.
We're incredibly blessed. It's amazing.
And I'll say you're also growing great leaders. I mean, two of your former employees are now superintendents. That doesn't happen by accident.
I know, right?
You're doing great things in
Yes,
this
ma'am.
district. Okay, well, it is an honor to be here with all of you this evening. And so the first thing I'm going to show you, you have a handout. And so if you turn the page on the back, I think we probably saved some paper, right? Yeah. It looks different, but it's the exact same information. And so the purpose is just to inform you that there are minimal requirements that must be included in this workshop. Again, this is a presentation that TEA provided us. And so while we have done it a couple of times, it is still fairly new. So unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of reading for us to make sure that we hit all the high points that TEA is wanting us to hit. So with that, if you could each just take a minute and share with us your name. When we see your names and your nameplates, the number of years you've served as a board member, whether or not you were elected or appointed, and just the reason that you decided to serve your community in this way.
Ms. Dell, would you like to
Okay,
start?
Del Brazil. This is my 12th year. I was originally appointed, and then I've been elected for the rest of my tenure here. Actually, I was first in the doing.
Were you voluntold?
My very dear and loving friend. But I did this because I've always been involved with the school from PTA, president, and served on Texas State Board of PTA as a health chairman. So I've always been, I've been on the on other boards and stuff within the community. So this is just another level of continuing to serve in my district and in my community.
Well, thanks for giving back this way.
My name is James Mulkey. Number of years, I think it's about 11, if I'm not mistaken. I was appointed, then I was elected, so I ran a campaign and won that seat. The reason I got on the board was I'm a former educator, retired educator. I wanted to represent my constituents in District 5, make sure that the schools had equal facilities, staffing as other districts and other schools in the district. And I enjoy being on the board. I enjoy working with the constituents in my district, even the athletic programs. I'm a big advocate of athletics, and I got on the board because I wanted to do something basically for the kids and make sure with everything that's coming with the safety. I'm really concerned about safety at the schools, and so that's what I'm on the board.
Emilio Carrasco, the new kid on the block still. So this December will be 2 years I was appointed, and reason why I decided to be part of the school board was to give back to the community, and this is my community, and went to school here. My boys have gone, and my wife, can't forget my wife, she graduated here as well. But I started from John Glenn, from elementary all the way through, so yeah, it's just what we do. Me and my wife this August celebrate 30 years of youth pastor, so we're volunteers at heart, have a servant heart, and want to give back to this great community that's given so much to our kids and to many generations.
Thank you.
Monique Presses, I've been on the board, I think, 21 years. I put my wrinkle cream on last night. So I was off for about a year or so. My daughter was hired by the district, and so I didn't realize that I didn't have to step down at the time. But anyways, as soon as I knew I could come back, I ran a campaign again and was back on, and I had a painting studio on 87. So every Thursday, on the third Thursday, I would sit at the stop sign and cry because I knew that everybody was having a meeting in there, and I missed all my people. But back again, and have been serving ever since, and graduated from East Central. My sisters, my son and daughter, and I originally just started, got on the board to be a liaison, a way of sharing. We have a child care center, and we've had it for 38 years, and it was a way for me to share with parents what it takes to run a school district. I certainly learned, and as I went along, I liked being an opportunity to just really reveal a lot of truths to what it's like to run a school district. So that's really the reason I first started, and I enjoy it.
Good.
I'm Ginger Friesen. I'm the sister, and we have had our child care center. I was 10 when Monique and my mom opened, and I was a Hornet. I married a Hornet. Just graduated my first Hornet. I have another one in 8th grade. But I've been on 2.5 years. It'll be 3 in November. I was appointed, and I'm here because basically the same. I have to advocate for students and staff in our community.
That's been
Nice meeting you guys too. Please meet him.
Yes, I have. I did see you earlier. I said hi there. But what about you, Roland? Why East Central?
It's home.
Once a Hornet, always a Hornet.
That's right, once a Hornet, always a Hornet. I just, I got an opportunity to student teach here back in my community, and was offered my first teaching position in the district, and have been given many opportunities over the last 29 years to serve in many different roles. Blessed to have the opportunity to do it here. There's kids everywhere and communities everywhere that need strong leadership and strong educators, but I would prefer to do it where I grew up. And so I still have the opportunity to do that, and hope to continue to be able to have the opportunity to do that right here.
All right, well, great. I love hearing the passion for the district, and so many of you are graduates of Central.
Well, I think the people behind us too are just the same. They're
Yes.
very
Yeah.
dedicated. They probably have more years than I do, I think.
Oh, Judy
Judy?
graduated a couple years ago.
5-0.
Not to put y'all on the spot, but
Really?
I know y'all been here just a minute, at least, right?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, long time.
Amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah. You don't see that everywhere.
No,
There's a
Very
reason,
blessed.
there's a reason for it.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I want you to know, Southwest, I've always been a dragon, I'll always be a dragon, I've always admired the Hornets.
Aw, all
I
right.
do really like it.
That's awesome,
Y'all
thank
got
you.
Sylvester and Daniel over there.
Okay, so just to kind of explain some of what you're going to be seeing this evening, if there's a slide and it has this handout visual on it, then it's going to be in your packet. And so that's kind of TEA's indication that you might want to, that board members might find that interesting or important, and there's a place for you to take some notes on it. You will see and hear several times this evening that they are really anchoring back the presentation this evening to the Texas Administrative Code and the Texas Election Code. And so you can see, one is going to be in purple and the other in green. There are many opportunities to kind of share with your partner, and then we'll be sharing out with the group. And then, again, the anchoring piece, we will constantly be making connections to your work as a board and to the A through F accountability system, STAR, and then the TEACS. Okay, so this is a new visual that TEA has developed. Not really new information though, so just showing all of the trainings that are required of board members, and so between Roland and I think, is it Cambry? Probably she keeps up with this information for you, so we won't waste any more time on it, but if you wanted this visual, we could certainly get that to you. Okay, so this evening, the reason we are here is directly connected to what's required in statute 61.1. So we're going to discuss this evening school board behaviors correlated with improved student outcomes. And we're going to make connections to A through F, STAR, TEACS, and effective board practices. So the purpose of the training is to provide research-based information to board members that's designed to support the oversight role that the board has, which is outlined in this particular Texas Education Code. So would anybody would somebody read this for me on the oversight of academic achievement?
The Board of Trustees of an independent school district or the governing body of an open enrollment school shall provide oversight regarding student academic achievement and strategic leadership for maximizing student performance.
Okay, so not Roland's idea, not Region 20's idea. This is in code that it is the board's responsibility to provide oversight. So if you could just talk with your partner for just a minute, how does that look at East Central? How does oversight of academic achievement and strategic leadership, how do you feel like when you think back to your work right now, what does that look like, or what has that sounded like for you all?
Are we supposed to talk?
Yes, yeah, maybe talk to a partner, or,
Yeah. Ginger, you can.
You might want a new Ginger, there's a lot of them, quite honestly.
Could you get yourself?
So what would be some of the things that you hear about at board meetings or decisions that you make that are related to academic achievement here?
Would it be at our monthly meetings when we get our reports from our curriculum, superintendent of curriculum and education?
Yes.
From our Jonathan, he does a lot of the, I can't think of what it's called right now off the top of my head, but anyways, just the reports that we get monthly from the team, letting us know what our scores look like, what, as far as the maintenance gives reports as to what they're doing as far as putting out fires and repairing, and when teachers put in work orders, how fast they're getting to those,
Yeah.
how much they're, and that's important because they have to have all of their items working, so those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. So as board members, you have oversight over that kind of information. And so, you know, you're not in the role of trying to figure out the work, but you certainly, as a board member, want to be informed about the academic achievement in the district. And then how do we know that it is maximizing student performance? So how do you know that when you are hearing that report, how do you think that helps to maximize student performance?
If we're thinking about, or if we're getting that information, knowing if we're on the right track and if we're moving in the right direction at the right pace, maybe just keeping up with that, you know that it's going to be where we need to be at the end of the year or semesters or whatever.
So accountability, right?
Yeah, accountability. I'm sure, I know for a fact it wouldn't happen here at East Central, but if boards didn't expect to have that kind of information, then, you know, student achievement may not be maximized, right? I mean, they may not be doing all that they can. So anytime we're sharing information, we know that that's important information, and we're going to pay more attention to it, right? Okay, so Lloyd's going to talk to you a little bit about school board behaviors that are correlated with improved student outcomes.
So we talked about this slide, and understand we're introducing some terms here about student outcomes. You're going to hear more as we go through the presentation about inputs and outputs and outcomes and how they align or should align, how they work in collaboration with each other. When we look at this visual right here, it basically is kind of an introduction to that when we talk about systems versus processes. You can see one of the systems that we do here in every district, here specifically East Central, for our presentation tonight, the vision and goals. And that matriculates into setting student outcome goals. What is it that you want your students to achieve? And we're going to talk more about what is a goal, what is a SMART goal, what are the tenets of goals here as we get further into the presentation. The values that East Central has, those core values that we believe, basically a process of that could be identifying some non-negotiables. So if a non-negotiable says we're going to expend X percent of our budget towards student outcomes, that's a non-negotiable. And so there's ways to take it from systems into processes, and we're going to try to break that down as we go through our presentation here tonight. And then under progress and accountability, monitoring progress. What does that look like under the umbrella of oversight? And how do you participate as a board member? So we're going to talk about how do you, the opportunity to ask questions, what questions could be asked. There are certain meetings, if there's a government oversight role in the district, and there's a management side of the district, and then there's a superintendent and the board of trustees who work in collaboration with each other and create unity to make sure that we can aspire to achieve those goals over time. And we don't wait for the 5th year to look at them. There's goal progress measures along the way to be able to set some milestones and to look at that. There's been a lot of research about the importance of the superintendent. When we say superintendent, we also are referring to the superintendent's team or his designee, those folks who work along with the superintendent on the management side. There's been a lot of research about the impact of a very effective superintendent in leading that work. In the last 15 to 20 years, there's relatively new research that's come out that talked about the importance and the role of the school board governing body, the body corporate, in their role in having a positive effect on student outcomes. And so the premise of our whole presentation is about looking at that, how do adult behaviors impact positively student outcomes over time. And so, as Sherry presented earlier, we're going to look at the new reset under state accountability. We're going to look at TEKS. We're going to look at adult behaviors and progress monitoring. Those are kind of the four umbrellas that we're going to touch on today. So when we look at that research that I just referenced, there's three things that really come out. Those entities who have a working in collaboration with the superintendent and the school board to develop student outcome goals is one of the research significant findings of that research. Those entities that do that really well has a statistically significant positive impact change on student outcomes. Also to provide the superintendent those non-negotiables as you're working in that collaboration, building that unity, that one team of 8. So identifying those non-negotiables that we definitely are going to hold on, that we know if we can get this achieved, then our student outcomes over time will definitely increase. And working in collaboration with the superintendent in basically monitoring those student outcome goals over time. And so those are the three research findings that came out of that some 15, 20 years ago about how important that is. And so at any point in time, if you have a question, you want me to stop, you want to stop, clarify, this is a conversation, so definitely feel free to ask at any point in time.
Yeah, I would just, on the identifying non-negotiables, what a good idea of that would be something that's TA mandated or something where we have to comply with that. But at the same time, when we're looking at all of the visions, the goals, and the values, and all of that, and the teamwork of the board and the superintendent, even though you may have some things that are non-negotiable, you can come around and collaborate with a way to even deal with those. Like, we're a smaller school district, so we need good collaboration in order to not necessarily circumvent what's mandated, but some other ways to achieve what that looks like us, that identifies our mission, even though it's a non-negotiable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes.
I will say, when I first read that, I found it to be confusing. Like, so what does that mean? How are you identifying a non-negotiable? The reason they have it aligned there with values is because non-negotiables from district to district could be different based on your district's values. What do you believe is important? So a lot of times boards will identify, districts will identify core beliefs or core values. And so one example that really resonated with me is like all means all. When we talk about all students at East Central, we mean all students, right? Not all districts feel that way. So that's the kind of thing when they're talking about non-negotiables. So you're working as a board with your superintendent and probably with your community as well to decide what are we about here at East Central. And so you identify those things because as he's doing the work, you're saying what you want done. He goes about doing it, and how he does it, he wants to make sure he's aligning with your values, with your non-negotiables.
Right. And we all buy into that, and that means that it is non-negotiable. It cannot be non-negotiable if there's only one person.
This is true.
Yeah, so, okay.
And TEA does not,
Yeah, yeah.
does not identify your non-negotiables in this particular instance.
Okay.
They do tell us many times what we have to do, but not in this one.
So when you look at the systems on the left side, there's the vision, goals, values, progress, accountability, and then on the right side, an example said the student outcome goal, identify non-negotiables, monitoring progress. That's like, left side is about 25,000 elevation, and then on the right side is about 5,000 elevation. Like when we come down and we want to ask questions. And this visual is specific to this presentation and to evaluating improving student outcomes. Just use some kind of frame of reference there. So how do we know that our system here at East Central is producing productive and engaged graduates? How do you know? It's just an easy question. You have a shoulder partner, or you can just tell us how you think you know.
Well, I think it's based on our graduation rate, our success rate, our attendance rate, that they're coming to school and they're wanting to be here. I think that through our reporting system from our admin, we get information that shows whether the kids are engaged or not. And if that's low, I think they tell us how they're working to fix that. That's some ideas I have.
Yeah, I agree with you. Test scores, start tests or whatever, you can judge it on that for getting engaged in what, and our graduation rate, same things,
The CTE programs, how many you have, how many are in it, how many are thriving, CTE programs.
So you look at data.
Right, that's what I was.
How do we know that we are playing a strategic role in that process? How do you feel you're playing a strategic role in that process?
How do you know?
Strategic is the what. So we're identifying the what we want. How does East Central trustees know that you're playing a strategic role in that process?
The information that they bring back to us,
Yeah.
and they bring it to us at every board meeting. They have some great card or whatever from every maintenance all the way up to academics, and they're bringing it to us for us to know what's going on.
I think based on our board goals too,
Yeah.
we have certain things that we say that we want to see. And it's just a working role that we play with our admin to see that those board goals are met. And they share with us how they're doing those. And then, of course, working with our superintendent and letting him know, kind of goes back to our values. He knows what is important to us. And I think that's sharing with him, sharing our concerns and asking questions. I think that plays a strategic role in the process.
Choose also the community involvement. I know it kind of fits in there too. And then what I mean by that is kind of like, so some of the interaction, some of the feedback, the pulse of the community to see if we're in the right path, right? Kind of the feedback is where I go as well. Off of what we're talking about, but it has a play, at least with me.
Great responses.
Yeah. I think a great way for me, as I looked at that, this year we had a cast graduation as well as the regular one. And when we talk about all being all, and then looking at the diverse community that we have, not necessarily racial, ethnically, or those things, but just what is expected of them from their educational investment, if I can use that word. And so, I mean, it was just, to me, overwhelming. We have some very, very famous people that graduated from camp, that appeared on band, rather, and a lot of others. And so what I think what it is this district keeps its eye on the ball for all kids. And the same, there's obviously some kids that will continue to go on in their educational process, and that is all, that is great. But there are other young people that already see an opportunity to go into the business community or whatever, and of course the CAS provided that structure. So for the first time, I think we could actually see what that really means.
I agree.
Very good. I feel like we just put this down, we can go home now. Well, we won't. So, to give everyone access to data and looking at pursuing our vision for Texas students, there's a vision at the K-12 level that we want every student prepared for a college career or military readiness. When you look at post-high school opportunities, it's the goal that Texas adopted by 2030. At least 60% of Texans will have a degree, a certificate, licensures, or other post-secondary credential of value. What that looked like in, I think, 2021 was 30% of all Texas students who have graduated, so we're at 30%. In 2022, it's at 36%. So getting there by 2030 is attainable, it's realistic. And wanted to show you this website. This is a website that anyone in the public domain can go to. You can extrapolate some really good data from this. And basically, it's the state of Texas. You can write the Southwest if you want. Always pick on them because they can't do anything to me anymore. And that's going to bring up very last one. That'll bring up some data. You see the overall rating and this data from 2022. You can click on one of those little things right underneath the letter grade if you want more information. So it breaks down the data in a district, student demographics, educator demographics, years of experience. It provides you these good definitions here. You can also, there's an area on this website that you can go to if you want to compare yourself up to 2 other school districts that are more like you like your demographics, to have comparison values to look at. You can actually go in there and put in the other 2 districts that you want and bring up their data and put it on a side-by-side to give you that opportunity. So the reason we're showing you this website is this is where it's kind of like the clearinghouse of all Texas data for all schools, Texas schools located in one area. It's pretty comprehensive, so you can spend a lot of time in this website. I've been in it. It's really valuable to be able to see other outcomes from other places and then be able to compare with other districts that you want to compare to, what you call kind of like a quarter group that you want to create yourself. So you can go in there. But it breaks all the data down into certain areas. So.
And I don't know why it's not doing it right now, but what would happen is if you, like I tried to put in Forestville, and so usually when you hit compare districts, then it just populates like Southwest right here, and then Forestville literally right beside it. So sometimes as board members, you know, you might be curious, like you have a rival district that you like to compare yourself to. The other piece is, this is not just good information for you as a board, but for community and parents, right? I mean, if, you know, I have heard from time to time, you know, where parents or community members might say, well, there's no information out there. How do we learn about the district? There is a wealth of information here. If anybody wanted to take the time to go through it, there's even finance information about, and the information about staffing, so just a lot of good information.
So I encourage you, if you have not been to the website, it's a really great place to visit. And we will share the PowerPoint with Cameron, and that address will be in the PowerPoint. I think we have it as well in one of your slides in the handout. So I think it's also in there. But we just wanted to show it to you real quick. That's where that website is, a lot of great information on that website. So why do we assess? Why do we assess students? Why do you think we assess students?
See their progress, how they're coming along.
See where they're at. Absolutely.
Are they at a standstill, are they going up or going down? So you got to assess what they're doing, you know. evaluated.
Yes. And if we're not assessing students, then we have no data to analyze to make that determination. What students need intervention, what students need additional support, or what students are ready. We have more information on this as we go throughout. But it provides us an opportunity and a snapshot to see exactly where our students are academically along the trajectory, whether it be in numeracy, math, whether it be in RELA, or any other field. So that's why we do assessments of students as well.
Okay. So the A through F accountability system is really driven by these three tenets in blue: fairness for schools, rigor for students, and transparency for the taxpaying public. So through its architecture, the A through F system takes into account the circumstances surrounding each individual district and campus and rewards successes. It is mathematically possible for every school system and campus to receive an A, and they believe, TA believes this should be the goal of all leadership teams. So this system is the most transparent accountability system that Texas has ever had. And anyone has the ability to understand how a community's schools are doing. I will say with a disclaimer, so the A through F was supposed to be an easy system, right, that we can all relate to. But most educators and you as board members know, whereas many community members do not, that it's actually a very complex system, right? It's not as simple as they make it out to be, which is why there's a lawsuit right now, right, in the state of Texas. That's not in my script, but I'm just sharing that. So yeah, reiterating what you already know. Okay, so we kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of the construction of the A through F system. You might ask yourself, how is this system set up to be rigorous, transparent, and fair? And so these 7 reasons, some of which we'll highlight in subsequent slides, but ratings can reflect the better of achievement or progress. Performance is evaluated through multiple valid measures. Progress is evaluates growth in multiple ways. The A reflects performance consistent with reaching long-term student goals. So your long-term student goals, but also keeping in mind Texas's long-term student goals. And then C reflects average performance for the baseline year. Ratings are based on a defined criteria, not a fixed distribution. And the system design remains static in most years. So, as you probably know, there was recently a refresh for the A through F system. It was originally established in 2017. And one of the things school systems wanted was the ability to have a true year-over-year comparison so that they could, there could be an accurate read of student performance. So when the accountability system was constantly changing, it was hard to say, okay, but was there growth or not? And so in 2017, what they did is set some parameters and then said, okay, we're not going to make any changes for 5 years. However, since 2017, TEA has felt like schools have made a lot of progress, even during, after the pandemic now. And so they decided to move forward with making some changes through the A through F, for the A through F system, so that it would continue to challenge students in the state of Texas. Okay, so this slide just kind of dives into the refresh. Though since that happened honestly last year, I'm not going to go into a lot of details on that unless y'all would like to, you have some specific questions. Okay, so Lloyd's going to tell us a little bit more about the domains of the system.
So digging into the domains, I know that we have a number of experts sitting in the room here who can actually talk about this a lot better than I can. But These are the 3 domains that are measured in the Refresh State Accountability System. We have student achievement, we have school progress, closing the gaps. Now the student achievement or the school progress, whichever the district does better in, they get to use that domain along with the federal, what we call the federal domain. We'll talk a little bit more about that in domain 3, closing the gap between groups of students. So when you look at student achievement, you're actually looking at students who start the year and where they're at the end of the year. When you look at progress, you're actually looking at where students were at the end of the prior year and what growth, what progress have they made. Did they grow an academic year? Did they grow academic year plus? And so whichever one of those. So the idea is that the benefit is to the district to be able to show that they either achieved a level of student achievement or maintained a student achievement. Some districts who are at the upper tier wouldn't have the opportunity to show progress, so they get credit for student achievement. And those systems that have opportunity for growth, and if you're growing, you also get credit for that. So either domain 1 or domain 2 would be 70% of the overall methodology, and the other 30% of the overall grade comes from domain 3, which is looking at specific particular student groups and making sure that we're able to reduce the variance of performance between those groups. And so we're going to take each one of these domains individually. Student achievement, it's a domain that shows how much students know and they're able to do by the end of the school year. Ratings in that domain are based on how many students are approaching, meeting, and mastering grade level. For high schools and districts, ratings are also based on how many students graduate and whether graduates are ready for college, career, or the military, what we all know as CCMR. So that's under student achievement. These, when you talk about the accountability results, when you get them, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, these are the 4 levels of performance that a specific student can attain, challenging the state assessment. They can either get master's grade level, and what that is equivalent to, according to the research that we're looking at here, is that those students who are at the master level will have a really great opportunity to perform at that same level in the next year in school. But if they're post high school graduates, if you're at master and you graduated, you have a 75% chance of challenging freshman level courses without any remedial and being successful. When you look at a individual who's at the meets level on the accountability, you have about a 60% chance. You're basically, if you're in K-12 system, your odds of doing really well the next year are definitely there. But you have about a 60% chance if you're a post-high school graduate of doing well on college level entry courses. If you're at approaches grade level, students are likely to succeed at the next grade level, or of course with some targeted academic intervention. It's basically a passing standard for high school graduation requirements. And if you're did not meet, you're unlikely to succeed in the next grade level, or of course without significant or ongoing academic or accelerated interventions for those students. Any questions on the 4 outcomes that students can get when they challenge any of those?
I have a question, and I would like to ask you or our superintendent, because it's my pet peeve that how we get information a year or 2 after the fact from the state. And so it's something that I complain about all the time, you know, because I don't know how we're expected to rise to the occasion when we don't get information but a year or 2 behind. But I was going to ask Roland, or maybe you guys, how is the fact that we receive data late, how does the ability to meet the A through F affected by getting late data?
Well, I will tell you, I'll show you in subsequent slides,
Besides
you're
the-
going to see a focus on other types of assessments. And the fact that the A through F assessment is a summative assessment. And so, you know, yes, it would be nice if we got it sooner to inform the following year's instruction. However, there should be other assessments that districts are reporting on, they're using reporting onto their board to have an idea of how their students are performing, and then making instructional adjustments throughout the year. What would you say, Roland?
Well,
And we do, but this part is.
yeah, so all of the things that were on the website that they shared earlier, which is great information, is only reflective of how students are performing on this particular assessment, which only basically tells you as a parent, oh, my kid could potentially do well next year, and if they graduated, they can do relatively well potentially in college. It doesn't mean they're employable, it doesn't mean they're good people, it doesn't mean they could write an essay necessarily and submit it to a paper and be published. So it's very narrow in that sense. The commissioner himself will say that these assessments, if you take the data from this assessment and sit around as a group and try to unpack the data and determine how much of something Mo knows or doesn't, it's malpractice, because that's not designed to do that. It's basically taking a very small slice of the standards that have been taught and representing them in an assessment that creates a distribution of how close to average or far from average kids scored compared to the whole population we tested. And it just gives you indications on your dashboard of things you might want to pay attention to as a system. But it can't tell you anything granular. So the challenge we have as educators is the websites like they shared seem to convey to the public that, wow, that's a B district, that's a really good district. Good at what is the problem, because districts do so much more. So the things that we talk about at graduation that you highlight, the things you're submitting in your article in School Bell Times are not reflected in that website. Okay. So we have to be careful that this is a very important piece of our accountability, a very important piece of information that drives the decisions we make as a body about the orientation towards improvement, but it's not all inclusive. And so that's why we share a lot more information about our community-based accountability system, the things we signal to you guys every quarter. They do include progress towards the data, formative assessments, benchmarks, screening, beginning, middle, and end of the year. We share all of that information to you guys to give us an indication of the degree to which our kids are tracking to do well on this assessment. But we can't get lost in being too myopically focused here, because it doesn't inform us enough to make wise decisions about curriculum, about assessment, about instructional modalities or delivery methods, or make qualitative decisions. This teacher's good, this teacher's bad, this kid's smart, this kid's not. If we only rely on this, we're gonna really create a lot of malpractice. So I just say that from an educator's point of view, and there's a lot of frustration around that. That's why there was a lawsuit. I can tell you right now, we're looking at our results, and there's a lot of problems. They're using AI to score writing samples, and there's a lot of issues with that. There's a rubric. When humans use the rubric to score it, the kids do a lot better than when they use AI, because AI is imperfect right now. It's got to be refined. So if there's slang words in there, it short circuits AI and it gets a 0. Well, this kid did well last year, and all of a sudden they got a 0. And when we review it, there's discrepancies to the tune of as many as 25% of the tests are scored totally differently by people using the rubric versus AI. If you're an emergent bilingual and you responded in Spanish, if you use improper Spanish, slang Spanish, short circuits. You gotta be scored by people, and when people score them, they do better than English speakers. They were scored by AI. So when you look at assessment over time, which is the other thing that I point out, I think it's worth making here. When I graduated from high school, a few of us graduated from high school, and in that period of time, the assessment that we took indicated the degree to which we mastered 8th grade skills. And we had to pass that to graduate from high school. A more recent generation had to pass a test that said you've mastered 11th grade high school skills. Now they have to master something that says you have a 75% chance of succeeding in a college course. So when we're trying to educate our community, and they think, what the heck's wrong with that school system? Back in the good old days, the school system is so much better. All you need to do is be smart as an 8th grade.
Right.
Now you gotta be smart as a college student. So it's not apples to apples necessarily. And so we've just got to do a good job of helping our community
Right.
understand that and make sure we're using all forms of information to tell the whole story so that you guys can make good decisions about what you want, so that I can make good decisions about how to make it happen. And so this is, quite honestly, these are great people, but this is a statutory requirement that the legislator imposed so that TEA can justify the importance of the STAR test.
Right.
And then you guys have to take the training every 2 years, and these great people get paid to have to use their slide deck.
Yeah.
And they've been gracious to offer a little bit of liberty and some opinion, but they really can't, they're not supposed to do too much. They're supposed to say, hey, here it is, this is the gospel. Listen, people, this is legitimate. So we'll take it with a grain of salt
Yeah.
and understand it has value and it has a place
It's
in the
another thing
system.
we have to relay to the community.
We have to just help them understand.
And the
right?
word you used was summative, which is.
It's a
And to
summative.
answer your question, yeah, it's an autopsy, right? It's
Right.
looking in the rearview mirror versus
Right.
informing our next best set of decisions.
Yeah.
And we have data that help us do that,
Right.
which is more useful for principals and ultimately for teachers than waiting to the end of the year, and then worse, sometimes not until the beginning of the next year,
Yeah.
once our improvement plans are done and our budgets are set and our strategic plans are assembled, then we get this rear-facing
Yeah.
information to say, oh,
Yeah. Oops.
all these plans and everything, and these budgets that we've allocated,
Yeah.
the good thing is our data sources do indicate pretty accurately what that's gonna communicate. And so we're not necessarily surprised,
Well,
it's just,
thank you.
To reiterate what Roland was saying, when you look at the approaches grade level, so if you were to talk to a room full of parents and say, where do you want your child to be? Everyone's gonna say what? Masters, right? But approaches, when you read the definition of it, that's not a bad thing, right? That's, you're going to be able to pass the standard for high school graduation. So it definitely is more challenging, the expectations that we have for kiddos nowadays compared to what we have had in the past.
and so raising the bar is a good thing.
Yeah.
We don't oppose
It
it at all, it's just not happening here, but what's done with those results is what the problem is. If it was used to kind of inform our next best set of decisions to continuously make progress, that would be great. But when it's used to shame or blame or
That's what's bad.
Yes.
make some political headway in one form or another. I mean, the lawsuits, the basis of it is essentially that there was some refresh that you guys know that basically we couldn't impact. You know, they made some decisions to change the standard for kids who already graduated. So the decision was made at a time when the narrative needed to be schools are failing and not making progress. So we can push alternative options for funding and for school.
Right.
So that's when it becomes
Yeah.
a little bit more difficult to use this in a way that is,
And what I digest a little bit from this too is it's, you say a moving goal line, but it's a goal line that you don't even know where it's at, is what I'm gathering. And so, from the state, so it makes it almost impossible.
yeah, and it's a mandate, and the commissioner's in a tough spot because he's appointed, by the governor, and so, he's got to do the best he can to try and navigate all of this, to be the chief instructional leader of the state, while at the same time, he's hired by the governor, and if there's a political agenda that runs counter to what maybe would be right, he's got to mitigate that the best way he can, but, I'd equate it to, if you just think logically, right, like, if I was training for a mile, and I did all the things for a whole year to get better at running a mile, and at the beginning of the year, I ran it 9 minutes, but I trained all year at the middle of the year, I better not run it in 9 minutes. I'm probably gonna be a little bit faster. If I keep training, by the end of the year, I wanna run it even faster. How is it that in the last 5 years, our kids are getting dumber by this assessment? If we're training for the mile, no, you know why? It's because you train for a mile and then you show up on test day and it's a steeplechase.
Yeah.
Where'd the water come from? Where'd the hurdle come from?
With all due respect, approaches grade level is great. What parent that would look at this chart and say, oh, wow, I want my kid to be number 3. I mean,
Yeah.
progress is good for anybody, even if you've achieved whatever, or whatever that's the case. But, like Rhoda said, you know, this is kind of, we want to be able to understand this in the way that our kids can actually excel, and that our parents can actually understand this and be proud of their child wherever they are. If you have done everything you could do, the parent is invested, the child is invested, and everybody's invested. And yet, as Roland gives that example, I mean, are we just going to really say, okay, we're going to settle for this? Do we have a choice about maybe, you know, some other things that we can do? Why is it that when you look on the news and everything kind of looks at Texas and says, they're failing that, they're failing all that. So if this is such a wonderful tool, why are our kids, generally speaking, not doing better?
But I think any parent would be satisfied with approaching grade level. I would. If my kid was approaching grade level, I don't know, they're grown now, but my grandkids, I wouldn't be overwhelmed. They're approaching grade level, fine, you're trying. I wouldn't, you know, but yeah, of course, I want to be master of me, but they're approaching grade level, I'll be satisfied.
They're on track. They're doing that.
Yeah, and don't let any of my comments suggest that this isn't a very critical piece of information that we use to inform the improvement decisions that we make. But it's in the context of a nice platter of information that we kind of use to make sure we've got an accurate story that's driving our decisions. And this is a big piece of it. So we're not marginalizing it. We don't say, oh, don't worry about that. But that's not the end all be all alone.
Yeah, I just want to, one word to your comments, Bill, I agree. Everything that you're absolutely saying. I'm not a proponent of a letter grade defining or describing a district, because we know there are hundreds of indicators of student success and student leadership and being able to do a number of things that won't be measured on a one-day, one-test, high-stakes test environment. Specifically for this presentation, you're right. I just want to frame it and make sure that that's all we're going to be talking about is basically student outcomes and adult behaviors that could have a positive effect on those outcomes. And I agree with everything you said, and I still do not believe you can find a district with one grade level. Just you miss so many other opportunities to show the value add that every school district has for their community and for their students. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well said, Lynn. So when we look at Domain 1, student achievement, and again, that's how students perform in an academic year. You can see elementary and middle school levels, how that methodology is all based on the STAR. They're high stakes, one day, one test, put in methodology and how they perform. At the high school level, Domain 1, when you look at student achievement, 40% of that overall grade comes from STAR. The other 40% comes from CCMR, college, career, military readiness. And then 20% is on the graduation, the AEA completion rate, basically the 4-year graduation rate. When students enter a cohort 9th grade 4 years later, that cohort when they're seniors and graduating. Just to give you an idea, as Dr. Bay said earlier, it's a very complex model, and it's gotten more complex over time when people try to ask questions about it. When you look at school progress, that domain is basically the comparison of how students perform. In part, this domain is based on many students show academic growth in reading, in math on STAR tests. It looks at the level of achievement compared to similar campuses. So you have a campus group that you're compared to, so you can get credit for students progressing from one year to the next, or students on the achievement side within that 1 year. So you get to choose better. Part 8, academic growth or relative performance. When you look at Part 8, it's looking at STAR. When you look at relative performance, it includes the STAR, CCMR, college career readiness. And so in domain 2, you look at student progress. That's the methodology that they employ for each one of those domains. When we look at closing the gaps, this is looking at groups of students compared to another group of students. It's meant to help to ensure that attention is given to every student, going back to the non-negotiable all means all. The ratings look at groups of students separately, and higher grades are awarded. Groups of students are doing well in terms of academic growth and student achievement. So you have the 3 domains, you have achievement, you have progress, you have closing the gaps.
How do you measure closing the gaps?
Yes, that itself is a really...
How you measure that?
Yeah, I think that's a whole, like, 3-hour another presentation. So you basically take the group, and you guys who deal with this every day can help.
I'll look at the next slide, and it breaks down.
Oh,
Yeah. There you go, thank you. So when we look at closing the gaps, academic achievement, you have growth, you have graduation rate, progress in English language proficiency, what you call the SQSS, school quality and student success. Basically, all subjects that are tested, all tests are in a methodology to give you this overall grade. There are a number of different steps that are applied to it. So you basically can take your students who are not equal dis, and if they're performing at a level that has a variance of 20% or 30% higher than students who are equal dis, you can look at that comparison between those 2 groups. And so the idea is that whatever group you belong to, according to this presentation and this pathway, those students should have the same opportunity with intervention and other types of means to make sure that they perform at the same level over time. So yeah, it's a very complex thing. I actually pulled that out one day. It was like 6 pages explaining it, how you choose what student group to compare, but it's the highest achieving group, and then what that variance is to your next achieving group.
Okay. So F student, a group of F students, if they come up to a D, that would be closing the gap, wouldn't it?
It would be, yes, yes.
So
Absolutely.
easy.
So you could have a group of students who are improving, but according to this particular model, it would have to meet TEA's description of that group. So that usually falls under either different ethnicities and or socioeconomic status.
Gotcha.
So that's the way they group those kids, and then districts identify which groups they are actually comparing.
This is a
It's
much
complex.
simplified system.
No.
So when you saw he put in Southwest earlier and they got a B in what?
Yeah. Well, I remember when Roland.
A B, how did they close, tell me what their B means for
Right.
closing the gap.
And I remember something you said a long time ago at one of our welcome backs, and it has to do with what you're saying right now. What does a B mean? So that does not mean, and I'll never forget these words that you said, how we are growing our kids. And that has stuck with me. That means, can they write an essay? Can they this? Can they that? I mean, our kids are well-rounded in lots of things. It doesn't, that B does not mean everything that they've talked in.
What 80% did they master?
Of what?
20% did they not?
Of what?
Yeah, do we know that? And, first of all.
Yeah, so that was always stuck with me about growth.
Oh, yeah.
Roland, help me to remember this. You have to help me, I don't know. About 2 years ago, maybe, I remember it was in the summertime, so I don't think it was last year, it might have been last year. Anyway, I remember we had some kind of assessment, and I'm thinking of closing the gap, because it wasn't just the grade, it was looking at a lot of other parameters. And I'm probably not describing this correctly, that's probably why you're looking at me like that. But I just remember it being very noteworthy that, and I don't even know what it was, I'd have to go back and see. But anyway, I remember you showing some statistics, even from our school compared to some others, so whatever. And we had a group of students with different identifiers that put them in particular categories in terms of learning, like socioeconomic and all of those other kinds of things. And then when you were mentioning, when Loki was mentioning the gap, I was thinking was in some kind of way that helped the gap that we had or whatever with these particular kids. I'm sorry, I can't remember better than that to help you to be able to point to that, but that's, I was thinking about that. And so it's not just necessarily grades in terms of closing the gap. There's all these other things that school district or community or whatever helps to do that. That puts that child or those group of young students in a position to be able to achieve even with all of these other things. And I'm not just talking about, you know, the identifiers that we have in terms of their levels and stuff that we you know, you give us reports on and things like that at the end of the year or the middle of the year when we're looking at those things that have obviously have an effect on their learning. This was some other kind of thing, and I thought it was even throughout the state or other places, but at any rate, okay.
Yeah, well, I'll think about it, and then
Yeah.
if it's presented again, point it out. Because there's several, I mean, when we're talking about, you know, how students who are retesting have done, we break that out by different groups and their historical test performance versus most recent. We're looking at the evaluation summative packet. It'll have all groups of students and how they perform over time, and whether we're making progress or not. So, you know, you can talk some of that. It could be the community-based accountability system that has pillars and kind of tells the whole story of the district.
I bet it's that one. I bet
Probably
that's one.
that one. Yeah.
Okay,
Any comment?
so we've been talking about the A through F accountability system, and that data is based on the STAR test that the kiddos take. And so, just as a reminder, the STAR is directly aligned to the TEKS that are taught, you know, as prescribed by the State Board of Education. So, last year, not the year you just finished, but the year prior to that, some changes were made in the STAR redesign. And the purpose of that was really to better align the assessment with instructional practices and classroom teaching. And so these were just some of the things, and I'm sure some time has passed, probably, you know, 2 years ago, your leadership team was sharing with you how the STAR test has changed, but it was the same last year and as it is this year. So all of this has already been implemented. Okay, so there are different types of assessments. So this goes to your question, Del, earlier. And they all have different purposes. So diagnostics on the far left are used to gain baseline data about student performance and help educators prioritize their instructional plans at the beginning of a learning cycle or at the beginning of the school year. It could be at the beginning of a 9 weeks or a 6 weeks or maybe even a unit. Then moving on over to number 2, formative. Roland actually mentioned several of these when he was sharing some information about this earlier. The formative assessments are probably the most important tool that educators have to understand if students are learning. Formative assessments can happen once a week, or you could have 4 or 5 of them a day. You know, it could be just a simple question. It could be asking students to model something. It could be multiple choice. It could be it could be a ticket out the door. But it's just some way for a teacher to know whether or not the students are getting the information. So then they can make some adjustments and then provide another formative assessment to see, okay, are they getting it now? Interim assessments are kind of a mini STAR test. And years ago, we used to take old STAR tests, old tax tests, and we make copies and let the kids take that. But TEA has come out now with an interim assessment that can be used. And so it's just really to monitor the progress and to really kind of predict how the students are probably going to perform on the STAR test if they were to take it that day. So then again, educators, teachers can go in and make some adjustments. And then lastly, we've got the summative assessment that we were discussing earlier, and examples of that is it's the STAR test, the TELPAS. It's that test at the end of the year that just really tells us whether or not the students mastered the TEKS that they were tested on. So it's important that we talk about the different types of assessments so that you realize if your district is only depending on getting good data from the STAR test, then that's probably not enough. However, as Roland has shared with me this evening, that's certainly not what is happening at East Central. You are utilizing all of these different assessments to inform instructional planning and classroom teaching. Any questions about the different assessments? Okay, Lauren gets it back. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the TEKS.
So earlier we were talking about STAR, and it gives us a measure of mastery breadth of TEKS. So the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with the TEKS. The TEKS are basically what the minimum of what all students K through 12 should be able to learn through their school experience. While you have them, it also kind of defines what educators are to teach according to this blueprint in Texas that we have by grade, by content. And so the TEKS are kind of like the blueprint of what the accountability system is measuring. So why is it important to have clear expectations across the state that describe what children deserve to know and be able to do? And so ask you to grab a shoulder partner, maybe take a minute and talk about that question there. Why is it important to have clear expectations across the state to describe what children deserve to know and to be able to do? What do you think?
Well, the same opportunity.
Same opportunity. Right. No matter if you're in far South Texas, if you're in West Texas, East, or West, that the TEKS are the same for all Texas children, all 5.5 million plus children in Texas to be able to do. So you're absolutely right. When we look at a TEK, this is an example of a TEK, and if I can get someone to read that one on the right lower, it's TEK 5.38. Would anyone volunteer to read that out for us?
No.
That's an example of TEK.
What is wrong with her? It says TEKS 5.3A, estimate to determine solutions to mathematical and real-world problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division.
Very good. So what's that TEK asking students to do?
To learn their math.
Absolutely.
I was going to go back to what happened to just
As an
reading, writing, and arithmetic.
As an excellent,
That's what I was going to go back to. Yeah.
Excellent,
That's what
excellent
my
answer.
parents used to say when we would bring stuff home. They'd be like, what happened to reading, writing, and arithmetic? But now the stuff that the kids bring home, I don't think people, they complain now about the system, the reasoning behind doing problems. Like the process is weird, so it's not like it used to be. But anyways, math.
Very good. It's asking students to make a estimation using problem solving involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. It's also letting the educator know that this is what we want you to teach in this specific particular TEK. So when we're kind of bringing this one part to closure. So we wanted everyone to all school board behaviors, to understand school board behaviors to relate with improve student outcomes, as we make connections. But I love the conversation in here because you're also identifying there are other indicators, and this is not the watershed of success or not. It is a very important component because of TEKS outlined the minimum students should be able to have an opportunity to learn through their school experience. And so, if anyone could read that yellow highlighted part, like shall provide oversight. Can anyone read that for us?
Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
Man, I can't even see this.
You do.
I can't see this for me.
Shall provide oversight regarding student academic achievement and strategic leadership for maximizing student performance.
Very good. What does that sentence mean to you? Oh, thank you. What is that one sentence in the yellow highlight mean to anyone?
Sounds like me is oversight, right?
Dwight, that will have this conversation, working in collaboration with the superintendent, setting out outcome goals. Here in a little bit, you're going to be able to hear Dr. Bays use a football analogy when we get into inputs, outputs, outcomes. And I think it's going to go back to what Meek said about we get this information so late, and it's always in arrears, right? So you have it a year later, what decisions can you make? That's already happened. But that's just one kind of frame to look at data over time. But the most important data is to look at real data in time. And that's all the assessments that, the 4 different assessments Dr. Bates covered. And that's what an input, output, and an outcome will also kind of reference as well. So how will AF, STAR, and TEKS help you make decisions as a board that provides oversight and strategic leadership? How we're looking at these 3 things: the AF accountability system, STAR, which is the state accountability assessment, and TEKS, which is the blueprint of what all students should learn through their school experience, and educators should be teaching those students through that school experience. Those 3 things, how will it help you as a board make decisions in oversight and strategic leadership?
Well, I think the A through F would be how, and that's each campus or whole district? Both, okay. So now each campus and district is doing based on the A through F accountability system. So we would be able to look at our district as a whole and then each campus. And then the STAR is going to reflect how our students are doing. And we would be able to use the STAR to know that. And then the TEKS would let us know how we're doing all over Texas compared to other places in addition to East Central. But I think there's a 4th one, and that would be what we learn from our admin and our superintendent in our reports, because we also grow our kids in ways that we like to see things happen, to know that they're well-rounded in learning. So, but those 3 things, what they do is what we use to see how we're doing and be an effective board. Is that right?
STAR is how well you're able to take a test, if you are good under pressure. Because I have both. I have a good test taker, and my little is not a good test taker. So she gets discouraged, but that's why it's one test.
So I guess when we get all that in, we talk to you about it.
Yeah, well, we'll look at this as an indicator, right on the dashboard. You know, check engine light comes on, we see some things there that maybe we want to learn more about why and how we can impact that. So we'll look at, you know, are our curriculum resources aligned to the TEKS? Are they covering everything that the student should be able to master at the appropriate level of complexity for each grade level in each subject? And then we'll look at our internal local assessments to make sure they're aligned to that. So they, you know, because that's what drives teacher decisions and the level at which teachers are teaching and what they're covering in the sequence of content that they're covering throughout the year. We want to make sure it's aligned. You know, that teachers are teaching it well and that we're giving them the training and the resources that they need to do that. And so it's always a way for us to, it's another really important piece of information for us to evaluate all of those things to see where adjustments can be made to make positive progress in student outcomes. And So for you guys as a board, us as a team, we always want to look at that and see what questions we have.
Yep.
To see what we can learn to make progress. Not to immediately go, oh my God, that's bad. Or that's just so great, we're satisfied. 'Cause neither are true. We're never satisfied and nothing's ever done. And so what can we mine out of this to help us make some decisions and some investments to make progress? And that's it. Constant forward progress.
Yep.
So, mining for nuggets of information from this data source and from all the sources we have to make the next best set of decisions.
And I think we're gonna always be a little bit ahead of the ball when we know what's expected of us. However we feel about that, but at the same time, we are always looking at various strategies again, to look at that total child and all of them, and to make sure that they're doing the very best that they can with everything that we have to be able to give them, to support them. And I think that's where our job is, to make sure that we meet that goal.
Also want you all to know that we fully understand that there's data missing here, like how Cass Lee lit the fuse of a student to get on a whole different trajectory in life and may lead some world corporate office one day because of that experience. How the ACE car race lit a fuse for some student to choose a pathway, and so those things aren't measured in this module, but they are extremely as important, I think, as this as well. So we do recognize that as well. I don't know if you all want to take a break. We're going to move on to goals, or if you want to just keep on going.
Keep hammering.
Does anybody want to start eating? Y'all can eat.
Oh,
while
they
we're
can.
presenting.
We've been picking.
Nibbling.
Okay,
We all right.
ready?
So when we talk about goals, we mentioned the outcome goals for a while. There are three types of goals: proficiency, growth, and comparison. And so when you look at proficiency goals, it's what percentage of students reach or exceeded the threshold that we had set out for those students to achieve. They define the student expectation as a set of value that we want students to either meet or surpass. Growth goals, where do we expect students to be relative to where they started? We look to the steps rather than at proficiency reached. It measures the level of growth experience relative to where that student did start. And when we look at comparison goals, what is either the proficiency or the growth of one group of students compared to another group of students? We've talked about these in other aspects, but now we're looking at the three major goals. So on this slide here, if we can have any volunteer, we'll take each one of these, and we're going to determine whether or not this is a growth, a proficiency, or a comparison goal. And so if someone could read, because I don't want y'all to just hear me read, someone could read that first one in a yellow highlight, and then as a group, we're going to make a decision if that's a growth, proficiency.
The percentage of third graders who were below meets grade level and STAR during the previous school year and who grew at least 1.5 grade levels through the course of the current school year will increase from 15% in August 2023 to 35% by June 2028. Is that a proficiency goal, a growth goal, or a comparison goal?
Proficiency goal, that was proficiency.
I say growth.
Growth.
Yeah, so we're going
You didn't
to.
hear 15% has the previous year, so you look at the 1 year, previous year, to that
So
year.
we're comparing, right? Or no?
We're not good test takers.
What throws you off is the word grew.
Well, they could be growth.
Yeah.
The grew, yeah.
Yeah, so we want to.
That's a trick question.
Yeah, this one here, you want to see how many,
Trick.
of the kids who grew 1.5 years, we want to increase the percentage of kids who grow 1.5 years. From 15% of our kids to 35% of our kids. So we want more of our kids to grow 1.5 years. That's a goal.
Right.
That's a good answer.
So that's a
We want them to grow.
We want them to grow.
That's a growth
Growth
I
goal.
said growth.
good.
Mine to compare.
All right, next one, gap between average STAR ELA, that's English language arts skill scores of all third grade students who are at approaches grade level in the previous year, and that of all third grade students who are at a meets grade level in the previous year will decrease from 20-point gap in 2023 to a 5-point gap in 2028. Is that a proficiency goal, a growth goal, or a comparison goal?
I'm not saying.
Oh, say.
She said I messed her up last time, so I'm not saying nothing.
She changed my answer.
She's talking about student groups.
Comparison.
Comparison, that's,
Comparison.
Oh, two against
Good job.
two.
so far.
All right, ready? The last one, percentage of third grade students who are at meets master's grade level in reading on STAR will increase from 70% in August to 83% by 5 years later.
What a guess.
Well, you like to keep it, just proficiency.
Efficiency.
Oh, that's the only one left.
Don't work.
Can we
When
let
all
the
else
kids-
fails,
Can we let the kids take STAR tests in a group? and
Eliminate.
come together?
Good point.
Okay, so, we're gonna talk more about those kind of goals, a little bit later on. So right now, let's pretend you're the owner of a major league football team. What is the outcome you want?
It sounds like a coach question.
What's the goal? You're the owner.
Get it over.
You want to, okay, you want to win a season?
Win.
Right.
Yeah. Why do you want to win?
Because,
If you ain't first, you last. I'm not, did I say that? Did I say
that's
that?
why you got there.
That's what we tell her, that's what we do.
That's your goal to win.
Your goal is to win, that's right.
Yeah, that's your goal to win, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. When you're the owner of a team, when your team's winning, your fans are happy, then what are they doing?
Right.
Yeah, more revenues, that's right. The organization overall is more successful when you're winning, okay? So before the game even starts, what do you need to win the game? What are some of the things you think you would need?
Motivation.
The best players.
Motivation, for sure. The best players, yep.
We want to
And a
recruit.
winning attitude.
A winning attitude. Exactly.
Some of the charter teams.
What else might you need? You need some good equipment, maybe?
Well, you need some good coaching.
You need some good coaches.
And some good players.
Yeah. You might
All
need,
of them go together.
you might need some good facilities,
Of course, well,
right?
you might can win without the facilities, but you got some players and some good coaches.
Okay.
But
What about
the
like a-
facilities would be.
Yeah, what about a workout room? I mean,
Yeah.
a place for them to get stronger?
You said before the game.
Yeah, no,
Right, before the game.
before the game
So
happens.
before you play the first game.
Oh, before you play the first.
Yeah, before you play your first game.
Well, you need
water-
all, you need all of them.
Yeah, you need all of
I
it.
was gonna ask, do all of the players have to be really good players?
Heck yeah, no.
We want the best.
You want them to be, but sometimes they may not be, right?
I mean, we have unlimited resources here. I mean, if we're not on a budget, we want all the best,
Yeah.
every one of them the best.
Okay, and remember, keep in mind, this isn't the East Central Hornet football team. This is a professional football team. This is the scenario we're going over right now.
Okay.
So, the things that we just described are called inputs. So, good players, good coaches, facilities, all of those different things, equipment, uniforms, good attitudes, those are all inputs. Resources and activities invested in a particular program, process, or strategy, usually knowable at the beginning of a cycle. So before the game ever takes place, these are the things that a owner of a football team would want. Okay, so what do you know at halftime? The middle of the game.
If you're losing,
You know if you're losing?
you know what you need to adjust to for the second half to
Yep.
improve play, make adjustments.
Exactly.
Yes.
What worked, what didn't?
How you go, You must have been coaching too, huh?
And that you also, you've had your eye on the other team, right? So you're gonna
Yeah,
learn some
that's
things
true.
from the other team.
Yeah, you know which players are doing well, which
Yeah,
ones you
yeah.
might want to bench for a while? Okay, can we still change the outcome of this football game at this point in the middle of the game?
Of course.
Yes. You can. So these are known as outputs. Well, all the things you just described that can happen, that you know at halftime, these are the outputs, the results of a particular set of inputs, usually knowable in the middle of a cycle, a measure of the implementation of the program, process, or strategy. Okay, so what do we know at the end of the game?
Well, you know if you won or lost.
Yeah, you know if you won or lost at the end of the game. That's kind of your summative
Right.
results, right? So that's the outcome. The impact of the program or strategy, usually knowable at the end of a cycle, a measure of the effect on the intended beneficiary. Okay, so what are some examples of school district inputs? What must we have in place before the school year begins?
Teachers,
Teachers,
Teachers, okay.
curriculum,
curriculum,
Transportation,
yeah,
facilities are ready to
transportation,
go,
yes ma'am.
technology.
You need some system goals to,
Goals for the year, okay,
Right.
very good. So these are resources and activities invested in a particular, let me see here. Resources and activities invested in a particular program, process, or strategy. And these are all things that you would need before the school year starts with kiddos. So, inputs or resources and activities invested in a particular program, process, or strategy, usually knowable when?
before the game.
At the beginning of the cycle, the beginning of the game, the beginning of the school year, the beginning of the learning cycle. Outputs, the results of a particular set of inputs, and when are these known? Halftime, in the middle of the cycle, halfway through the year, and then outcomes, the impact of the program or strategy, usually knowable when?
At the end of the year.
End of the year.
At the end of the cycle, that's right. Okay, so, what might be some examples of some adult outcomes? So we've talked about inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So what would be some examples of adult outcomes in a school system?
Besides the ones you have there.
Yeah. So what about your first rating? The budget? That's an adult outcome, right? Parent engagement, staff retention, any information you're gathering on facilities or operations. Those are all, can be very important information that you need throughout the year for students to be successful, but they're really adult outcomes, okay? And then we have student outcomes. So a measure of school system results that are student results rather than adults. They measure what students know or are able to do. We've talked a lot about, the different assessments and things, so that would be student outcomes. What might be some other student outcomes that's not related to STAR, because that's what we've been talking so much about.
Certificates, graduation.
The data that we get from the career college military ready.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of student outcomes, but those are some really good ones that you just highlighted. Okay, so we're going to do this as a group. Which ones are adult outcomes versus student outcomes? So what about new buildings
Adults.
Adult. What about STAR results? Student. What about student extracurricular activities?
Students.
Do you have a balanced budget?
Adults.
Adult. Technology program.
Adults.
Adult. Students will benefit from it, but the creation of the program would be adult. Think about this one. Kindergarten attendance.
Adults.
Adult. Very good. I almost always have somebody say student. Kindergarten, yeah, because those babies can get themselves to school. If it were high school attendance, you might could say that that's a student outcome, right? They can get themselves on a bus if they need to. Okay, SAT, ACT results. Student. Detailed lesson plans.
Adults.
Adult. Earned student industry-based certifications. Somebody already mentioned that. Ginger did. Teacher incentive plan.
Adults.
Adults. And school board conferences.
Adults.
Adults, yes. So I guess they put that there because they think that's an important adult outcome as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about student outcomes versus student outcome goals.
So we've talked a lot about student outcomes. We're going to look at the tenets here of student outcome goals, and you all have student outcome goals in your district. But this is looking at what every student outcome goal should have. And so every student outcome goal should include a baseline, which is basically the starting point, it's the current status. So your baseline is where you currently are on this particular content, this particular month and year. It shall also include a target. And what do you think the target is? It's where you want to be in the future, it's where you aspire to achieve towards. Identified population, a group of students who will be impacted, evaluated, and then a deadline, the month and year when that measure will reach the target. I know Mr. Toscano just read through some goals on some of the previous slides, and you noticed that they had a month and a year when you talk about the baseline, when you talk about the target. And the idea is for those goals to have a month and a year. It makes it more specific to actually include the month. Usually in the past, we would put a year, but they're now more specific. So when we talk about a student outcome goal, those four tenets should be present: baseline, target, population, and deadline. Those need to be present. Goals also need to be SMART. And can anyone remember the acronym of SMART when we talk about goals?
You know, and it's measurable, but.
Sorry. I thought I was going to fly in when I did that. It didn't. Specific. Every goal needs to be specific. Every goal needs to be measurable. Every goal needs to be attainable, results oriented, and time bound. And so we talk about SMART goals, and we talk about student outcome goals, those four tenets: baseline, target, population, deadline, but they also need to be SMART. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, results oriented, and time bound when we decide on the goals that we want to put. So when we look at student outcome goals, they describe what students know are able to do as distinct from adult inputs, adult outputs, student input, and student outputs. They should all include a baseline, stuff we just went through. They should also challenge the organization. So if you're setting a goal in baseline is June 2023, and then by June of 2028, if you put that to only increase 2 percentage points, that's not challenging the organization. So the idea is when you write your goals is you want to be challenging. They should require adult behavior or behavior change. That's basically having those collaborative conversations about what we want to do, about monitoring the goals along the trajectory, being able to have input along that. They should represent the community vision, and the board owns the process while working in collaboration with the superintendent of student outcome goals. Here in a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit about student performance measures, GPMs, and so that'll be a little bit different when we get there. But for the purpose of here, that work is done in collaboration with the board superintendent. They're brought to the board for conversation, dialogue, and then y'all either adopt them or not. Then the board owns those student outcome goals after that part. There should be a 5-year deadline with yearly targets. And it should always be the superintendent's first priority for resource allocation. The goals should be influenceable by the superintendent, and they should be goals that are specific, measurable, attainable. And then HB 3, 3 of the goals have to be early literacy, early numeracy, and then CCMR. And so the federal government under ESSA requires us under House Bill 3 to have those 3 components. So the idea is that there should not be, the recommendation is that there be 3 to 5 goals. We have 3 here. There is research saying why does TA recommend limiting the number of student outcome goals between 3 and 5? Why not more?
It's too many. It's too many to keep up with.
If you try to do everything, normally you end up doing nothing. So they want it to be specific. I know there's some research from Franklin Covey that did some research, and they researched some places that had 8 or more goals, and over time they basically achieved 0 to 1. They compared that to organizations that had between 5 and 8 goals, and normally 1 or 2 of those would be achieved. But when they look at entities, organizations that had set between 3 to 5 goals, about 75 to 80% of those goals were attained at a time. So the idea is to come off the rim of the funnel and come down and create some kind of laser focus. This is what we're going to monitor. This is what we want to watch. This is where we want to create some change. And so when we look at this slide right here, there's actually a goal at the top. The percentage of 3rd grade students whose scores meet grade level or above on STAR reading will increase from 45% in June 2022 to 64% by June 2027. So who can tell me where's the baseline? Oh, thank you. So what would the underlying, okay, let's start with the population. Where's the population of this group? Who are we talking about? So that's the population, this specific goal. Wants us to draw a square around the baseline with month and year. Everyone see the baseline?
June 20.
Yeah. Don't look at that one. There's the baseline. 45%, that's our starting point, 45% in June 2022. That's our current state for this specific example. And a circle around the target. Where do we want to achieve? 64%. 64%. And it has a month and a year there as well. And the deadline by June 2027. There's a new kind of caveat after they presented us with this PowerPoint, went back and said, well, it's going to be important to identify what the actual assessment is. In this particular case with the brackets up there, where the assessment that we're looking at for this specific goal is under STAR reading as well. And so that's when looking at a goal, it has all tenants, a baseline, a target, population, and a deadline on it. So this is a scenario with setting outcome goals, Joyful ISD. It is part of your packet. I really don't want to go through that scenario. We're going to give you 20 minutes to read through it. I'd rather just kind of look through the goals ourselves, if that's okay with you all, unless you want 15 minutes of reading time and doing work. I think we can achieve the objective here together.
You learn together.
Find the, so these are, I'm gonna bring up here. And I'll give us a little time to look at this. So I just wanna kind of put a disclaimer on here. None of these 5 goals, or any of these 5 goals, do not meet the criteria of a bona fide student outcome goal. Our task is gonna be to take each one and determine what's either missing or why does it meet the criteria of a bona fide student outcome goal. Number 1, the number of pre-AP seats in the district reserved for economically disadvantaged students will increase from none in May 2023 to 20 by May 2028. Is that a student outcome goal? Answer.
What do you ask? What did you ask?
Number 1,
What are you asking them?
Is it a student outcome goal?
is it a bona fide student outcome? Because does it meet all the criteria, a baseline, a target, a deadline, a
Oh,
population?
no, there's no ID, there's no measurement tool. There's a population, there's a target.
Right, there's really not a population there of students. And so when you really think about it, is that even a student outcome goal? Or is it possibly an adult outcome goal?
What's an adult outcome goal? So we control the number of seats.
Yep, exactly.
Well, there's a measurement.
So it's not, so keep this in mind as we're going through these. What TEA is wanting is for boards to realize, like to be aware of the goals that you're adopting and to make sure that they have all of these different pieces. And so, you know, the assumption could be that before we went through this training, you might could have read any of these and thought, oh yeah, that's a good goal. But as we walk through them, you're going to see that there's something wrong with every one of them. And so in doing that, hopefully as you adopt goals, you will make sure that your goals meet all of these suggestions and are smart. And you also want to make sure, again, you have oversight of student outcomes, not adult outcomes. That's something that Rowan will have to probably manage as he is trying to work towards the student outcomes, right? But, so we're not saying adult outcomes aren't important, but when you think about your time, you want to spend your time, the majority of your time as a board, talking about student outcomes. So with that said, number 1, you're right, it doesn't have a population because honestly, it's not even a student outcome goal. So that's not a good example of a goal.
Yeah, it's referencing pre-AP seats, so more of an adult outcome goal. Seats. The second one, the percentage of students who score 1450 or higher on the SAT or 30 or higher on the ACT will increase from 10% May 23 to 25% May 28.
Student.
It is a student, you're
Student.
right. Mhm. What might be wrong with that one then?
And remember the
There's no measurement tool.
SMART specific? Does that look specific?
What percentage? Percentage of students who score, 10 or 25?
Where are those schools? Where are the Pacific?
What are we talking?
It does provide some specific parameters on SAT and then on ACT, but those are really 2 different tests, right?
Of course.
So the goal should be specific in measuring one
What?
thing. So if we were to take this out and did a goal just like this, and just left the SAT, and then did a different goal for ACT, then it would meet the criteria of the student outcome goal. The fact that it's talking about ACT and SAT, 2 different assessments, means it doesn't meet that criteria of a student outcome, a bona fide criteria of a student outcome goal. The third one, the percentage of teachers of special education who report high job satisfaction will increase from 60 in May 23 to 95% May 28. Remember, we're talking about student outcome goals. What's that referencing, that goal? So it doesn't meet the criteria because it's really talking about teachers in this case, so it's not a student, just plain and simple, it's not a student outcome goal. Number 4, the third grade students scoring at NEET grade level or above on STAR Mathematics will increase from 41 to 59% by August 2028.
Student goal.
It's a student goal, what's it missing?
Start date.
Yes. It definitely is. It's missing the month and year of our baseline, so the baseline. Not particularly.
By August.
Yes, it should say will increase from 41% in June of 2023, and it's missing that component. So it doesn't meet the criteria of a bona fide student outcome goal. Number 5, the percentage of third grade students that score meets grade level or above on STAR reading will grow by 5% each year until August 2028.
So you mean there's no baseline? There's no start?
Yes. It's missing baseline, you're absolutely right. What else is it missing?
The measurement tool, like how are they
That's
doing?
not his use.
Target.
I'm on target.
And you're right, it doesn't reference the assessment.
Deadline.
It's inferred, but it's definitely not. Are there any of these that you all want to take separately and talk about? Or the idea here is when we look at a goal, it should include those 4 tenets. It should include the baseline, the target, the deadline.
Population,
What's the other one?
the population measurement
Population.
tool.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll transition with this one. So in a football game, why does the scoreboard matter?
Information.
It's providing information to the players, to the coaches, but also to
Official.
the officials, the people in the stands. The fans, yes. And so we're about to move into talking about goal progress measures. So you have goals. You have, the owner of the football team needs to know how they are performing. And so it is the same for the district. You adopt goals as a board, but it's important to measure the progress along the way.
So we're talking about, and we refer to these as GPMs, goal progress measures. There's specific graph applicable student outputs, indicators that are used to determine if the goal is likely to be met over time or not. So they do have some similarities when we're talking about student outcome goal and a goal progress measure. They are similar and they both include a baseline, a target, a population, a deadline. They should both challenge the organization, and they both require adult behavior change as far as similarities. When we look at what's different between a student outcome goal and a goal progress measure, the board owns the goals, the superintendent owns the GPMs, the goal progress measures. GPMs are predictive of, should be predictive of achieving the goal over time or not. No more, the recommendation is that there's no more than 3 GPMs per goal, and the status of GPMs is updatable multiple times a year. So when you talk about goal progress measure, you can change those through the year after looking at data. But a student outcome goal, you don't change until the end of the cycle, basically in specific to the end of the school year. And so there are some similarities between a GPM and a student outcome goal. There are some differences between the two as well.
effectiveness of a goal progress monitoring, a monitoring report needs to be presented to the board in an efficient, informative, and effective manner. So a monitoring report provides evidence of progress to the board regarding their adopted student outcome goal, and it should contain at least these 4 pieces of information. It should clearly identify the student outcome goal and goal progress measure that the data is referencing, the current status of the student outcome goal and goal progress measure compared to previous annual and deadline targets. And then it's not enough just to get the data. So when your leadership team is providing data, the superintendent or the superintendent's designee, depending on the information that's being provided, should provide the board an interpretation of the performance. As board members, this is one of the reasons you need a superintendent, because they are the educational expert. It's their job, not yours, to look at the data and to decide, okay, this is what this means to us at this point in time. And then, most importantly, provide information that describes, okay, so now what? Like, what are the next steps? This is the data we have, and what are we going to do with it now? And so, just from the conversations we've had tonight about what you're doing in this district, I know that these things are already happening, but there are districts across the state where, this isn't all happening. And so it's not enough just to get the data. And a lot of times as board members, they may not be comfortable saying, well, I don't understand what that means, right? But this clearly defines that they should receive an interpretation of that and next steps as well. So this is just an example of a monitoring report. They absolutely do not have to look like this at all. But you'll see that it does contain the different components. So to start off, it has the goal that the board has adopted, and then it also includes the goal progress measure. So this is what the superintendent and the leadership team then owns. It's the how they're going to meet that goal. Then it provides the annual target. So just, as board members, you get a lot of data, right? So it's not out of the question for you to ask to see, okay, so, here's the data, but where were we? Where are we? And remind me, where are we headed on that? So you have this visual, right? And so that you better understand the information that's being presented to you at that time. And then we talked about, okay, so we're, what does this mean? We're slightly off track because, and, showing what that means with the data, the overall progress that's being seen, and then what I talked about, a plan moving forward based on that data. So any questions about that process? Again, I know that that's happening here based on what y'all said. Okay.
So questions that lead to effective monitoring question development. So going through what Dr. Bays just talked about, during the monitoring session, there's an opportunity to lean into asking certain questions of the leadership. The 3 types of questions that are recommended are technical questions, tactical questions, strategic questions. So what is a technical question? So a technical question to ask is trying to understand how something is measured. So if we're talking about 3rd grade math, it's having a great understanding, well, how do we measure success in 3rd grade math? What are all the aspects that we're using to determine if students are progressing or not down a certain pathway? It also focuses on understanding the details surrounding the assessment and goal details. So it provides you an opportunity to ask questions to leadership about, well, how is that measured? and then following kind of that train of thought. Those are considered in that arena technical questions. There's also tactical questions, trying to understand how something is done, focus on understanding the details surrounding the goal implementation of the assessment and the goal, and strategic questions, trying to understand how something aligns to the priorities that we set. So what is that alignment like? I think on a couple of previous slides, when Dr. Bays brought up, it had the goal of measuring third grade reading, it had a goal progress measure of second grade, so that alignment, you're already working on students to make sure that we're doing things so students can achieve that goal when they get to the third grade as well. So you have technical questions, you have tactical questions, you have strategic questions that you can ask. And so it's really trying to understand how something is measured, trying to understand how something is done, and then trying to understand how something aligns to the student outcome goals that we set, we adopted, that we own, and is there alignment in that. So it's really trying to encourage trustees to kind of lean into technical, tactical, strategic, to have a better understanding of where are we, what have we done in the past with this, what was that outcome in the past. And when you're in these monitoring session opportunities, the recommendation is that 3/4 of that time, so if you're having that session, you're talking about the state of the progress right now, that 3/4 of the time focuses on understanding past actions. Where are we today? How did we get here? What's worked? What's worked in the past? What's not working? What did not work? And what do we learn from those examples? And investing maybe 1/4 of the time, focus on future actions. What strategies will we deploy, given our current performance, to maybe see a change in that over time? And so these are extremely difficult to remember. That 3/4 of that monitoring session is going to be about what we've done in the past and what that looked like after we've done that, and should we continue doing that? And 1/4 is really talking about strategies about moving forward. And so I think this aspect of the presentation is really just trying to encourage those types of questions. With the management side, they're going to bring information to you, give that information, and then you have the opportunity as the body corporate to ask certain questions about what that trajectory looks like. So as we wrap up this part of it, we wanted to make sure that we discuss school board behaviors and how they're correlated to improve student outcomes. Trying to make connections between the accountability system, the STAR assessment, the actual assessment, the TEKS, which are the blueprint, and then effective board practices. And I agree with Dr. Bay said, a lot of these things you guys are doing, and I think you're doing very well here. Because when students come through East Central, I believe that they have a really great opportunity to live a great quality of life because of that experience. And you guys are core and key to make sure that continues to happen in collaboration with the superintendent. So how will understanding technical, tactical, and strategic questions help you make decisions as the board provides oversight and strategic leadership? How do
And we covered this.
So what TEA does with this presentation
Oh, yeah.
it is repetitive, James.
Okay, I
You're
got
right.
that.
It is.
Good catch.
Very much.
Yes.
All right, no problem.
Are you saying we can remove this slide? So there is a little exit ticket. Is this yours?
I'll do this one. Okay, so with everything you've heard today, if you would choose one of these things that we're going to ask you to share out. So either if you'll share what was the most important thing discussed today and why is it important, if you don't like that one. Can you tell us one way you can connect something you've heard or learned today to your role as a trustee? Or maybe something like, I used to think this, but now I know, or I think this. So really just some comment about the information we've presented, but also about the discussion you've had here tonight as a board.
I think that the information about the teachers were very important to learn how to teach the teachers and stuff like that, with mathematics and curriculum. And I learned something, right? Although I forgot it, but I have. But I really learned it.
You want us to write that down to leave it?
I'm sorry.
You want us to write that down to leave it?
No, you don't have to do an extra
Oh.
ticket. I'm just saying we can just share it out. Yeah, I'm not gonna make you write it down.
So I think,
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead. No,
okay. Yes, ma'am.
you go, you go.
So one of the most important things, or the takeaway I took, was student outcome, right? And then, how do we get there, right? It's kind of the big goal for me. I have a son that just, 2 years ago now, graduated from high school. He decided not to go to college. Of course, as parents, being you excited about them further education, but he got a great job there at CPS Energy, and he's going to do well.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the takeaways I get is student outcome isn't always college, because I'm going to tell you, working for CPS myself, not all of them are college bound, and we need workers to keep the lights on.
Sure we do.
That don't
And
need a
it's
college
not,
education.
it's not because he couldn't do college.
Correct.
He doesn't want to do college. He doesn't want all that debt maybe, right?
Well, he said something too, it was pretty awesome. He said, Dad, I don't want you to waste your money. I said, well, me neither.
That's right. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I think the idea there is the same, the skills and traits to go to college are the same skills and traits to enter effectively into a career, and even a military or perhaps.
I enjoyed the questions that lead to effective monitoring, and I kind of just left some pieces out, and it helped me to, they all say to understand, but I liked how you can look at the word measure, and then details, assessment, those keywords, you know. Reading those helped me to understand how to be, or thinking about being more effective. Leaving out the gibberish and thinking about just exactly what it's saying. Something is measured, how's it measured, and then the details surrounding that, the assessment and the goal. So that kind of helped me, and then it said how something is done, and everything always says understanding the details, but implementation, the word implementation, you know.
Yeah.
When there's so many words around something, you don't really key in on the exact words of what it's looking for. So I underlined those, and then the last one was priorities, you know, priorities and system performance, and what did we learn from that performance? So priorities, performance, I just was connecting those words together in these effective paragraphs here. So I like that. I like that page.
It's funny, you bring up a great point. We had that conversation before about DRIP, and you want to be a school district that's data rich implementation board.
Yeah, wow, that's a good
You're right,
point.
you talk about data to,
How's that
end of time.
Mhm.
It's more about looking at data and making decisions, and you guys do that
That's a
really
good
well.
point. Anybody else?
I like a couple of things. I like the football analogy, and I'm not a football
Yeah, that was
person.
good. Yeah, that was good. I like that.
I know sometimes you're like, where are they going with this, right? But then it kind of came together.
Right, because I'm with my
That's
husband and my son, and I'm watching, I go, okay, I understand. But it did help my perspective in terms of when you were talking about goals and, what you start off with and all of that. That helped, I can relate to that perspective of that. And so that really did help me to think a little bit more about, what's expected in terms of the outcomes and the goals and what you bring to the table and all of that. But I also like this piece about the technical questions and tactical questions and the strategic questions, because it reminds me of when we're having our time together to look at what's going on with the students and the progress and all of that. What's helpful for a board member to me at that point is when you have all this information and it's explained to you, and the hard questions have already been asked, and you present the information so that we can have a picture of, because we're not expected to be in the classroom, thank God. But we're supposed to have an understanding of what that looks like and what that looks like in terms of measurable, analyzing the data, measuring things and whatever, so that when it's time for us to look at how we can help move this ball along, the recommendation can be made if we need to have, so therefore, based on what we've learned and we've heard from experts and we've done all of the homework to bring it to us, then we can make a decision based on good, credible information that will help you do your job even better. And so then it could be said, just as an example, okay, we based on everything, we need a minimum of 2 more counselors or 3 more teachers in this particular, because we see this going, but we know if we had to blah, 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 blah. Whatever those things are. And then you can make an intelligent decision. And I will brag on us. I think we've come to a collaborative decision on the things that we look at, because we may be different and we may look at things from a different perspective, but when it comes time to look at the overall picture, I think we move ahead and make those decisions. And, we trust that those outcomes will be aligned with what we said or whatever. So, anyway.
I agree. Anybody else want to share about anything on your
I just, one way I can connect to today's workshop in my role as a trustee is, I would like to maybe get more specific in our goals, maybe just because the community looks at stuff, and I think if they had a visual, here was our goal and we met it, we exceeded, so I think that would help us not so generalized in our goals.
Okay, yeah.
And we can do that, we can look at those.
And I would be willing to bet that most of your goals are SMART in nature,
Yeah,
because this
they
isn't
are.
a new concept, but it's good to have something to kind of, almost like a rubric to gauge it by, right? See if there's any ways to improve it.
Well, really great feedback from each one of you, so thank you. This does conclude our presentation on ISO this evening, and I want all of you to know your stewardship and support of your school community is very much appreciated, not only here at East Central, but throughout the state as well. So your gift of time to your community is very special. And just wanted to make sure here from Region 20, we say thank you for everything that you do. Not only for East Central, but raising the whole state to another level. And we've really enjoyed our evening here.
Well, good, I was so glad.
Thanks a lot.
Orla didn't lie to us, he said you're
Come back
awesome.
soon. Thank you. Okay. All right, so does that close our board workshop? Anybody have anything before we go? All right.
No, you did give them all their
I did give everybody your paper, your little
calendar
calendar that was
next year.
formed up permanent. I thought I laid one next to you. Okay, so, agenda item number 7, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? A motion by Emilio, a second?
Second.
By Mr. Mulkey. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, good night.